All right, we'll get started. Let's stay on this slide, please. All right, so my name is Marissa Espino. I am a Public Outreach Section Manager here at the Orange County Transportation Authority. Thank you all for joining us this evening and sharing your thoughts about the Orangethorpe Transit Village Conceptual Study. This study will analyze mixed-use development concepts that could include neighborhood retail, offices, and housing, while preserving and enhancing the transit park and ride functions at the site. Tonight, we want to get your feedback about how you use the park and ride and what kind of improvements and features you'd like to see at the facility. We appreciate your time and look forward to hearing from you tonight. Next slide, please. This webinar is also being presented in Spanish and Korean via Zoom. Please click on the interpretation icon located at the bottom of the screen and select your language of choice, which is English, Spanish, or Korean. To hear Spanish or Korean only, click the mute original audio option. I'll now hand it over to Maria Yanez Forgash, who will explain these steps in Spanish, and then to Kelly who will explain these steps in Korean.
Muy buenas noches y gracias por acompañarnos el día de hoy. Si quiere escuchar esta presentación en español, por favor seleccione el icono de español que está en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Y para escuchar solamente el idioma interpretado, haga clic en Mute Original Audio para silenciar el audio en inglés. Kelly?
환영합니다. 예, 켈리엄이라고 합니다. 통역을 맡았고요. 오늘은 이제 한국어로 들으시고 싶으면요. 저 해석 아이콘을 클릭하시면 됩니다. Interpretation이라고 써 있거든요. 그걸 클릭하시고 그리고 Select your language, Korean, 한국어를 선택하시면 됩니다. 그리고 한국어 번역만 들으시려면 그 Original Audio를 음소거를 클릭하시면 됩니다. Korean Interpretation only, Mute Original Audio, 음소거로 하시면 됩니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you, both Maria and Kelly. All right, next slide, please. So today's meeting is being recorded and will be posted online for others to view at their convenience. Attendees' cameras will be off and microphones are muted, and there will be opportunities to ask questions during the webinar. Questions can be submitted throughout the presentation using the Q&A button, and the team will respond to questions during the Q&A session. To use closed captioning, select the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can also use the raise hand function if you prefer to ask a question verbally. Next slide, please. If you select the raise hand function, we will call your name and you can unmute yourself to speak. If you submit a question via the Q&A function, we'll ask the question for you. If you're dialing in with your phone, please press *9 to get in the queue to ask a question. You will be announced by the last 4 digits of your phone number, and then you will press *6 to unmute yourself. Next slide, please. So today's speakers include OCTA Project Manager and Angel Garfio, James Dunsmore, who's the Study Project Manager from Gensler, who is our Technical Consultant, and myself. Next slide, please. Here's our project partners, our study team. This study is being conducted in partnership with the City of Fullerton and in collaboration with the cities of Buena Park and Anaheim. Our consultant team includes Gensler and Ariano Associates. Next slide, please. Today's agenda will include an overview of the study, initial observations, transit village examples, poll questions, and a community engagement update. We again encourage you to enter your comments in the Q&A section, or feel free to raise your hand to speak so we can call upon you during the Q&A session. I will now hand it over to Angel to begin the overview. Angel?
Hello, everybody. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Angel Garfio, and I am the planning manager for the Orangethorpe Transit Village Conceptual Study. Next slide. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the study site already, but I just want to go ahead and take a second to orient us with the site. The Fullerton Park and Ride facility is bounded by Magnolia Street and Orangethorpe. And just to the south, we have the influence of the freeways of the 91 and the 5. The site is owned and operated by the Orange County Transportation Authority. It's approximately a 9-acre site and services 8 bus routes, 7 of which are OCTA bus routes, one of them, the 460, being a Los Angeles Metro route. The site also hosts 14 bus bays and 2 on-street bus stops. The site does have 745 parking spaces on site. And this is a particularly important site for the Orange County Transportation Authority in terms of ridership, which is one of OCTA's highest transit ridership centers in the county for bus routes. Next slide, please. As I did mention, although the site does have 745 spaces, we've noticed limited usage within those spaces for park and ride facility matters. Although again, it is our highest ridership transit center, we've really identified that there's some space for potential improvements on the site. So that being said, our study goals here is really to provide improvements and transit supportive opportunities at the park and ride facility. And we've outlined a few goals that we've created in conjunction with the cities of Fullerton, our partner on this project. The first one being, in no particular order, to create a transit supportive mixed use development. But again, I should caveat this with that this is a conceptual study. So at this phase, we're really just studying opportunities on the site. Our second goal is to enhance the transit and park and ride facilities at the site. We want to improve our transit ridership experience. We want to increase access to sustainable mobility options and ultimately strengthen the community pride within the area and create a community sense of place in the area. Next slide, please. And the study name, the site features an abstract outline of the project site with extensions following along the outside of the site, as well as various modes, as we can see on the top, leading to a future potential joint use development on top of the site. And ultimately, our tagline for the Orangethorpe Transit Village study is really reimagining the OCTA park and ride facility, because as I mentioned, as this being a conceptual study, we really want to explore a range of opportunities and a range of ideas that could be implemented at the site. So with that being said, I'll pass it back off to Marissa to field a few questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Angel. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have some poll questions. We want to learn a little bit more about you and how you use the facility. Our first question, what is your connection with the Fullerton Park and Ride? A, I am a nearby resident. B, I work close to the site. C, I use the OCTA bus facility. D, use the parking for surrounding destinations. Or E, I have no connection to the site. And we're going to go ahead and pull up the poll so that you can make one of those choices. There's also the option to, if none of those answers apply to you, you can certainly add your answer to the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And we'll see it there as well. So you are picking a single choice on this one. And we'll give it just a minute or so for people to make their choice, and then we can show the results.
Looks like we got 77% choices. Okay. All right. We're almost at a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now.
Thank you. Okay, let's see what we have here. So at 63%, we have nearby residents. 25%, they use the OCTA bus facility, and then 13%, they have no connection to the site. Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing that information. Let's move on to the second question. How do you usually get to the park and ride? So for those that this applies to, your options are A, walk, B, ride a bike, C, drive my car, D, take the bus, E, use rideshare, F, dropped off by family or friends, G, use a scooter or skateboard, or H, I don't use the park and ride. And again, a Q&A button is available if you want to write something different. All right, thank you, Adrian. You pulled up the slide, the poll, and you're selecting one choice on this one.
All right, I think we got everyone to complete it, so I'll go ahead and
Perfect.
close it.
Thank you. Okay, so our highest percentage, 50%, don't use the park and ride. And we appreciate you attending this to learn more about what we're doing. 25% take the bus, and then 13%, 13% as far as walking or ride a bike. All right, very good. Okay, thank you so much. I will hand it over now to James, who will go over the study tasks and timeline.
Thank you. Thank you, Marissa. Good evening. I'm James Dunsmore, lead planner with Gensler, working on this project on behalf of OCTA. And I'm also a Fullerton resident, so I'm really happy to be here tonight talking with you all about this site and our community. Next slide. So we've been working on this project for a few months now. We kicked off work with the cities and OCTA this summer with some initial site assessment, looking at the existing site conditions, parking, access, traffic, and we'll be sharing some of those findings tonight. And we also began a community outreach process and stakeholder engagement, working with the cities to identify stakeholders and plan for the community outreach program, including tonight's event. Right now, we're just at the end of the site analysis phase, so we'll be sharing some of those analysis findings and using those findings and your input through this series of community meetings to develop conceptual site plans that'll be presented next year and also analyzed for environmental impact, with a preferred option being identified and provided in a study, draft and final study. And this is the first in 2 series of community workshops that we'll be having during the project. This series is focusing on the existing site conditions and brainstorming and generating ideas from the community about what options you'd like to see on the site. There's been 1 meeting so far, tonight's virtual meeting, and we'll be having a second in-person meeting later this week. And then, as I mentioned, later this next year, we'll be having a second series of community outreach meetings to share some of those draft options that have been developed. And of course, throughout this process, you can reach out to OCTA to share your thoughts or any questions. Next slide. So now I'm going to share a little bit of our initial site analysis, beginning on the next slide with the site history. So the Orangethorpe community, Orangethorpe as a place, the name actually dates back to the 1860s when ranchers and farmers first settled in this area. And they called this community Orangethorpe, taking the name from, of course, the local orange crop and the Old English word thorpe for village. So there's been a long-standing identity of this place and the idea of this as a distinct community within Fullerton and on the edge of these cities. In the 1920s, Orangethorpe was actually incorporated as its own town before later being annexed as part of Fullerton, with parts annexed into Buena Park and Anaheim. And through the mid-1950s, the site remained primarily an agricultural community and a rural community, but that began to change with the development of the freeways and the building of the I-5 and 91 freeways. And the history of the site has really been shaped by these mobility projects. Over the next decades, suburban development followed the freeways, and by the 1970s, Orange County was a very different place, much more suburban and starting to be more congested. And also in the 1970s, there was increased awareness of environmental impacts and also rising gas prices, all of which led to a desire for alternative modes of commuting and transportation, which led to the founding of the Orange County Transportation District, which became OCTA in 1972. And in 1974, the Fullerton Park and Ride opened as the first park and ride facility in Orange County. Next slide. So the site today remains dedicated to transit and mobility uses. As Angel shared, the majority of the site is dedicated to parking. That's shown in blue, with a similar area shown in orange for transit uses. That's where the bus facilities are today, and a small portion of the site that's occupied by natural area and flood control channel that also runs underneath the site. Next slide. Visiting the site today, you might notice some of the challenges that we face in looking at opportunities for potential development. First is the fact that the site's located directly adjacent to the freeway, and we have noise and pollution from that to consider. There's also limited pedestrian bike access along Orangethorpe, in particular, with long distances between designated crosswalks and intersections. While there are transit amenities on site in terms of seating and shelter, There aren't really other amenities for people who aren't using the site for transit, and the existing restrooms that are there are no longer available for the public use. There are also utility lines along the edge of the site on Orangethorpe and the flood control channel that runs underneath the site, all of which need to be considered and will be considered by this study as we think about potential development options on the site. Next slide, please. But the site has tremendous opportunities as well. As Angel mentioned, the existing parking that's on the site is not well utilized today. And we've recently completed a study looking at the parking utilization and found that only about 20% of the parking spaces are currently being utilized. So there's a huge opportunity to think about other uses for some of that parking area. And some of the assets that the site has for potential development or alternative uses are the high visibility from Orangethorpe and Magnolia, the existing transit services, which makes this site well connected to North Orange County and other areas throughout the region, great vehicular access from both the surrounding streets and adjacent freeways, and proximity to schools and residential neighborhoods that could make this an attractive area for alternative uses. Next slide, please. So now let's bring back Marissa to talk a little bit about some of the things you might like to see on the site.
Okay, thank you, James. So yes, next question is, what improvements would you most like to see at the Fullerton Park and Ride? And we'll move on to the next slide. We have some visuals for you. A would be more shade. B is enhanced security measures. C, improved street crossings. D, better lighting in the evenings. E, more activities while waiting for the bus. F, more comfortable seating. G, improved bathroom facilities. H, secure bike parking. I, bike repair station. And J, electric vehicle or e-bike charging. Again, you can put something in the other, or if you have something different to say, you can answer that in the Q&A button. Now let's actually bring up the poll so you can take this. In this particular poll, you are picking your top 3. So we'll give people time to read through those again and pick your top 3.
When you see the question, there is a little gray bar that you can scroll down to see more options.
Yes, thank you, Maria. It's A through J is what you're looking at. So if you don't see all that, then you definitely want to scroll down a little bit to see all of your options.
And just waiting for a few more answers.
Thank you.
Okay, it's the minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and end it and show the results.
All right, thank you. So what do we have as our top 3? We have 2 tied at 67%, enhanced security measures, and E, more activities while waiting for the bus. That's interesting. Okay. Would love to hear more about what kind of activities that you're thinking. We do have several at 33% with more shade, improved bathroom facilities, and secure bike parking. And then at 17, we have a couple more, better lighting in the evenings, and then the more comfortable seating are kind of the last ones. So, okay, very good. I'm going to mark that really quick. All right, thank you. Let's move on to the next one. And I think that goes back to James. Okay, so yeah, James is going to be next, and then we'll do another poll question in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what do we mean when we say transit village and potential development on the site. So as Angel mentioned at the top of tonight's meeting, one of the goals is to think about transit-oriented development. And what does that entail? Really, it's about creating a mixed-use, pedestrian-friendly community centered around transit. And the icons that you see on the slide here represent some of the different types of uses that could occur on the site to support transit, whether open space, retail, shopping, commercial development, office space, or residential and housing, as well as improved pedestrian, bike access, and improved transit facilities. And next, I'll show you 3 examples of different transit villages up and down the West Coast that show examples of what could occur on the site here. So the first example is Ivy Station in Culver City in LA County, and this is located adjacent to an LA Metro station. The development here includes restaurants, shops, and services on the ground floor, with 5 to 6 stories of housing, office, and hotel located above. And as you can see in the image, one of the key elements of this project is a central open space with a water feature that can be used for different events. And open space is a key important element of a transit village. Next slide, please. Another example, which is adjacent to a bus facility like this facility, is Pacific Station in Santa Cruz, California. And this proposed development is located adjacent to a bus facility. And again, the ground floor uses include restaurants, shops, and services, with 5 stories of housing above. And one of the key elements of this project is a central pedestrian walkway that provides access to the transit center. And as you can see in the image, many of the transit amenities, such as places to buy tickets or get information about transit, are incorporated into the design of the overall development. And the project includes improvements to the streetscape, such as enhanced sidewalks with pedestrian lighting, landscaping, and bike lanes. And finally, the third example, Othello Square in Seattle, Washington, is also adjacent to a transit facility. And this project is interesting because the ground floor uses include a children's health clinic and child development center. And above are 5 stories of affordable workforce and market rate housing, so different types of residential housing incorporated into a single transit village. And in this case, they used public art from the community to enliven the facade. So those are just a few examples of some of the potential opportunities and types of development that we could see at the site. And Marissa's going to ask a question about some of the things that you would most like to see on the site. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So yes, here's the question. If transit-oriented development were considered for the Fullerton Park and Ride, what transit supportive uses would you most like to see? And we do have some images, so let's go to the next slide. A, housing. B, office. C, hotel. D, retail shops, restaurants, and services. E, open space like a plaza or parks. And then F, community events. Let's go ahead and pull up the poll. For this one, you are picking your top 3.
Okay, we're at 55% answered. Waiting on a few more answers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're almost at the minute mark. Just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it now. Share the results.
All right. We have a strong pick at 86% for retail shops, restaurants, and services. Then we have at 57%, we have a tie. So open space and housing are the top 3. Following that, we have office, 29% picked other. I don't know if anybody put what other was in the Q&A. If so, Maria or Adrian, please feel
Yes,
free to share.
I would say that Donald feels very strongly about housing. His vote was for all 3.
Got it. Oh, got it.
as
3
housing.
times. Okay. Housing. Okay. And then at 14%, we had the community events. Okay, very good. All right, thank you for sharing. Let's go on to the outreach slide. All right, so public engagement is always a key component for all of our planning studies, as we want to make sure we engage and hear from stakeholders and community members throughout the study process. The first phase of outreach for this study started on September 30th and will continue until November 10th, allowing residents to engage with OCTA. To keep residents informed about the study, we have implemented a trilingual notification campaign, ensuring all materials are available in English, Spanish, and Korean. Our notification efforts include a webpage dedicated to study updates and materials. We have distributed over 1,700 mailers and flyers, along with conducting door-to-door notifications within a quarter-mile radius around the study site. We've also used digital tools like electronic notices and targeted social media ads to broaden our reach. Lawn signs and public counter notifications have also been placed at key locations to increase visibility, while an e-communications toolkit has been shared with partners, stakeholders, and community groups to help further distribute the information. With these strategies, we aim to ensure that all community members are well informed and can participate in the study process. Next slide, please. To engage the community, we've organized a range of activities designed to reach as many residents as possible during the first phase of outreach. We are hosting several events and pop-ups at various locations to connect with residents and gather their feedback. Along with this webinar, we held an in-person community meeting last Saturday, and we'll be holding a second one this Thursday, October 24th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at Buena Park High School. In addition, we have a community survey, which is available in English, Spanish, and Korean. This survey is available online and as a hard copy, and will also be distributed to all of our at all of our outreach events. Next slide, please. Here's a QR code to the survey. By participating in our survey, you will have a chance to win one of two $50 gift cards. Next slide, please. We encourage everyone to stay connected. Please visit octa.net/FullertonPNR to learn more and take the survey. You see Angel's and my contact info in case there are any follow-up questions. And just a reminder, this PowerPoint and the recorded presentation will be available online, so you can access all of this information later. Next slide, please. All right, so now it's time to answer your questions. As a reminder, you can use either the raise hand or Q&A functions if you'd like to ask any questions or make comments. If you're dialing in with your phone, please press *9 to get in the queue to ask a question. Then you will press *6 to unmute yourself when called upon. All right, let's start the questions here. I'm kind of reviewing what we have. Let's start with the first question we received. Angel, this is going to be for you. How will the project be funded?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. So for this specific funding, we are using state funding for this project that is coming down, and it's called the Regional Early Action Programming, if I believe that's correct, funding. So this is coming from the state to study this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angel. I do see a raised hand. Dominique Moonhart. Let me have you unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Yes, hello. So I'm a Fullerton, right? I do have a question. I have two questions. So if you can give me insight on the multiple transportation agencies and how will they play effect to this to the Orange Throat Village study, just because I know the LA Metro, I know they have a station at the park and ride. And then has rail transit been considered for this site? Those are my questions.
Okay, I'm going to hand those to Angel.
Yes, thank you. So one more time, I didn't hear the actual keyword in that last statement or in the first question, but I'll answer your second one to begin with. Currently, we don't have any rail plans for this specific area going and being implemented at this time, or none that are identified in our long range plan as of yet. But we'll have to see to the future to see what more plans come out of that. And then your first part of your question was what again? I'm sorry.
How will the multiple public transportation agencies how do I say go into?
Are you talking about like collaboration? Like how do we partner with each other? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Because I know LA Metro has a bus station at the park and ride.
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now, in terms of having to collaborate with LA Metro, it's really more so on a bus operational level, and not so much on the actual site, because as you did mention, LA Metro does have a stake in this in terms of their bus line that operates through there. But since it's solely jurisdictional in Orange County as well as in the city of Fullerton, it's mostly just looking at what the site could do now. In terms of looking at the bus service, we have another study that's coming out pretty soon. And if I could get some help on the name of that study, I know Marissa might be aware of that other bus study that we're working on.
The OC Transit Vision, is that what you're
Thank
talking
you.
about?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. There we
Transit Vision.
go.
Yes.
So it would be like working with them in that kind of study to identify how we could, bolster bus ridership for LA Metro at this station.
All right, thank you, Angel. Let's see, we have a raised hand by Donald. Donald, could you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi,
Hello.
can I be heard?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yes. So I just want to know how this will increase accessibility. Will you guys be adding Wi-Fi for the nearby students? And I also want to know currently, why does this park and ride station not connect to every single other park and ride station that is nearby? For example, there's no way to get from the Fullerton Park and Ride to the Buena Park Metro Link, and also there's no way to get from Fullerton Park and Ride, excuse me, to any of the other Anaheim stations, anything like that. So based on what I've seen, any changes y'all make go towards rolling back accessibility, right? How will this be a reversal of those trends that I'm seeing from y'all?
Angel?
Yeah, thank you for the question again. As a part of these efforts, as it relates to any transit service really being on the side and bus route specific questions, that's something that's going to be coming out of the other study that was mentioned, our Transit Village, I'm sorry, our Transit Vision study. For this study specifically, we're really looking at actual on the ground improvements. While transportation bus operation assessment is being conducted, it's more so how buses are working around and interacting with the site rather than actual transit service. So I know it's less than an ideal response, but for this study specifically, yeah, it's really mostly looking at the actual on-site land use of the site rather.
Right. So land use, accessibility, and land use. I'm sorry. This is actually something that I study, urban planning and stuff like that. So land use and accessibility are, I in fact don't see how y'all don't see that those are two directly connected, ways that we look at resource management, right? If we're going to be using land, it needs to be accessible, right? 1 + 1 is 2. So that's what I'm asking here, right? Y'all are in charge of a lot of the funds, right, that I, as a working Buena Park living taxpayer, pay into. And like I said, I'm seeing trends that look like an abandoning of accessibility. So I'm asking, how is this project going to assess, address, and move forward given that contradiction of accessibility? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Marissa, if you had something to say.
No, just go ahead and respond if you have a response.
Yeah, in terms of accessibility, this will be kind of a portion that is going to be included into the study. And I totally understand how your, land use and accessibility do go hand in hand, definitely. And it will be considered, as a part of this study, but I think maybe a greater reference document to look at to ensure that connectivity is there, as well as your comments that are incorporated for the kind of bus service and accessibility is really more catered to our transit vision study. Again, just for this study, it's really trying to look at while pulling data from that transit vision study as well into the study, but really just more so focusing on kind of mobility improvements at the site, whether that be amenities and or potential developments at the site. So.
Okay, thank you, Angel. Let's move on. We actually have a few other questions here that I want to make sure that we get to. Victor asked, who will be the developer and what housing densities are you looking at?
Great. Thanks, Victor. So at this phase of the study, it really is a planning level, purely conceptual study. So not even quite talking about what developers we're going to be moving forward with. Really, the sole purpose of this first portion of this study is to determine what kind of concepts would even be feasible. So that also speaks to the question of what kind of densities we would be looking at as a part of our financial analysis. And we also do have a market analysis we're conducting. From there, we'll be able to make a better informed decision as to what kind of densities could be potentially proposed on the site. But really for that development option, and when it comes time to working with a developer, we're talking many years from now in terms of where we're at this conceptual planning level study.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, our next question. Is OCTA coordinating with local cities?
Yes, it's a great question. Thank you. We are currently coordinating with the city of Fullerton, who's been a kind of a lead partner on this project with us since the inception of the study this summer. We're also working alongside the cities of Buena Park, as well as Anaheim, to make sure we're really getting a holistic community approach to kind of getting recommendations and feedback for this study. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angel. All right, next question. So we've kind of covered this, but maybe we can just reiterate a little bit. What type of developments will be studied? Can you touch on that a little bit, Angel?
Yeah, definitely. As a part of our market analysis, we're really looking at three kind of different land uses or development options, one being housing, retail, and office. And we preliminarily looked at hotel, but have then realized that maybe there isn't as much of a demand as there is, for example, for housing or retail space in that area. So as a part of that effort, not just saying, the market analysis is going to determine what's kind of flourishing within the area, but we'll really have to look to a further later date for the financial analysis for that to show, what really is feasible in terms of what types of concepts of those that I just mentioned are feasible for the site.
Okay, thank you. We do have another question. We are starting to get lighter in questions, though. If anybody has anything else that they want to ask or even share, I'm curious if anybody wants to talk about some of those poll question answers, why they picked what they did. Please feel free to raise your hand or share in the Q&A. But Angel, we have a question here about noise. It says, I use the site and it can get very loud. What would be done to mitigate noise?
Yeah, I think I can really pass this one to Gensler as they're kind of developing more of some of those conceptual design ideas and thinking of some of those innovative solutions. So I can pass it to James.
Thanks, Angel. I think this is a great question because we know noise is one of the big challenges on the site today. And there are a few things we can do from a design perspective to help mitigate some of that. So one of the first things is actually trying to block some of the freeway noise. Today, there isn't any sound wall along the edge of the site, so that might be something that could be studied, as well as landscaping that can help mitigate some of that noise to stop noise from coming onto the site, and that would benefit both transit users on the site and any potential development. And then as we think about development options on the site, particularly housing, which is very sensitive to noise, we can look at how that might be oriented on the site. So it might be designed to face north away from the freeway, with more of the service side of the building facing the freeway. And we can also look at the architecture and design of the building itself, some of the materials we're using as we craft design guidelines that might involve using more insulation, different types of windows, and different types of filtration systems for buildings in order to ensure that the site is safe and healthy for people to live.
Perfect. Thank you, James. Okay, we have another question from Victor. Is there an urban revival aspect to this project? The underpasses and intersection of Magnolia and Orangethorpe are really run down. Angel, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, as it pertains to the underpasses at the site, really the kind of jurisdiction that the Orange County Transportation Authority has over the site is solely looking at the site and at the property at which we own. So when speaking about the underpasses, that might be more of, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, maybe Greg from our team, that might be more of a Caltrans, under Caltrans's jurisdiction or responsibilities to do that there. But in terms of urban, revival, it's, if we're proposing these conceptual plans, yeah, I mean, our main goal for the study, one of the main goals is to kind of enhance that community in place for the neighboring and surrounding communities. So in that sense, I think that goes along with kind of that that theme, especially given that it's currently a kind of underutilized lot. So thanks for that question.
Okay, thank you. So this question, it's in regards to the homeless population. It says, can you get rid of the homeless population? My bike has been stolen several times. Maybe we can address the safety elements that we have for this study. Angel?
Yeah, definitely. With regards to kind of the safety elements that we are going to be studying, one of those, I'm sorry to hear that your bike has been stolen from that location, but with one of those being is what we consider kind of a mobility hub element is incorporating bike lockers at the sites. Maybe and then I know it was also mentioned earlier, including Wi-Fi at the site. But these are all really elements at the site that could be, incorporated as a part of the study findings to really improve that sense of safety at the site. And I know James can maybe mention a few more concepts that kind of go in alignment with that.
Sure. I think one of the biggest things we can do to make the site feel safer and be safer for users is bringing more activity and visibility to the site. Right now, if you're out there, you're a little bit exposed in the parking lot, and there's not a lot of other activity during the day. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at development. Not just to help provide housing, but things like retail that a lot of people were asking for can help provide some of that eyes on the street, that kind of presence during the day, so that there's somebody there. You can feel a little safer. If there's an incident, there's people that are nearby who can respond. And this is also, I think, part of why we're working closely with the cities, because their partnership is going to be critical to address the safety concerns.
All right, thank you. Okay, so Donald, I believe your hand is up with a new question. Let me call upon you in case you have another question.
Yes, ma'am. I actually do have another question.
Okay.
I wanted to ask. First off, I will make a side comment that the way to properly deal with victims of houselessness is to add housing. But my question is, what will y'all do to mitigate the north and south traffic going up and down Magnolia? The way that it's set up now, drivers are free to ignore the very obvious law and to not block the intersection, right? How will that be mitigated by this construction? Thank you.
All right, Angel.
Yeah. Again, just to be explicit, the study is purely conceptual at this phase, so we're not quite into the construction phase. But in terms of your analysis and looking at the neighboring roadways, a part of this study is actually doing a traffic analysis in the neighboring area. So we are actually looking at kind of traffic flow patterns, as well as peak and kind of off hour traffic usage surrounding the site. So as that comes up, I know Gensler and team will be able to identify any concerns with the area, as well as propose some potential solutions. But ultimately, again, I mean, we're focusing on the site whatever solutions are proposed or kind of anything that has been identified to address those issues kind of is ultimately at the hands jurisdictionally of the cities first. But again, we are working with the cities on this.
Okay, thank you, Angel. All right, I don't see any questions at this time. Let me move on to the next step slide. We'll see if anything pops up before we close out tonight. So yes, here are our next steps. We will continue to receive our initial round of public feedback until November 10th and then analyze those results. We expect to have our conceptual site plans by mid-spring of next year. Then we plan to hold another community workshop series in the spring. And then we'll have a preliminary environmental assessment by late spring of 2025. Then the final report is expected to be complete by late summer of 2025. Kind of gives you an idea of where we're at. All right, I'm just scanning to make sure one more time before we kind of close out here. And just a reminder, so we have the, oh, okay, let's get Dominic. I see that you raised your hand, so why don't we answer that question first? Go ahead, Dominic.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, can we also look at possible rail train opportunities for this site? Because I know this is close to a rail area, and it's also close to Metrolink. So if we can do a study on rail to that site.
Angel?
I'm having technical difficulty here. Yeah, as it pertains to any rail or connectivity studies like that, it really would be a completely different undertaking. Although to note, we have conducted a background review of existing plans, and as far as that extent, any suggestions or any future recommendations that is kind of pertaining or connecting to the site will be incorporated with the study findings, but that's really the limit of what this study will be conducting, because it really is the sole focus is to really just focus explicitly on that site. So again, yeah, any other additional studies pertaining to rail or improved transit at the site is an additional undertaking that would need to be done by our agency as well.
Right, and I'm gonna plug in the OC Transit Vision for those who are interested. I'm trying to type it in real time here. Hopefully I got that correct. So it's octa.net/OC Transit Vision. You can learn more what we're doing through that study. That might give you a little bit of insights and you might have some interest in that. Please feel free to sign up on that database and you can be informed. We are at the tail end of that study. It's a look at our overall transit services, and we'll have a report by end of year that could be of interest. We refresh this every few years, about every 4 years. So that's what we're kind of in the middle of doing right now, and just kind of talking about the transit system. Okay, so I am looking one more time, just double checking. And it looks like we are done. So what I was going to say is that thank you, but also before kind of closing out, just a reminder that this recording of the webinar will be available online afterwards. So if there's anybody that you think may be interested in learning more about this study, it will be available for them to review. We also have an upcoming open house in 2 days. So Thursday night from 6 to 8 at Buena Park High School. So please feel free if you want to come out and ask some more questions, or again, if you have anybody that you'd like to share that information with, we would love to have them out and answer questions and just provide information here and have them take the online survey. So with that, just wanted to thank everybody for being here. We really appreciate you taking time because we know we're all busy and really appreciate it that this is input that's part of our development process, and we really appreciate your contributions. So I wish you a good night and a good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.